I'm Keith Bergman, and today in the Devblog, we're talking menus and movement and cats and goats. Hey, thanks for joining me on the Devblog. I've talked a little bit in the last episodes about how I got started in all this stuff, but I never really talked about why I'm doing a Devblog to begin with. Because what I'm doing isn't really all that noteworthy or original or advanced. It's one guy making games in BASIC right now. And part of the reason I'm doing it is to hold myself accountable. Like I think I've mentioned before, I have had projects going back to the early 2010s that have just been sitting and not getting done. And I want to get that stuff finished. I'm in my 50s now, and part of me is just like, I need to get this stuff on the assembly line, knock it out, get it done, and move on to other things. I have sort of this bucket list of my old programs that I want to get finished and pushed off into the world before I start on any new projects. So part of the reason I'm doing these weekly updates is to keep myself in check and make myself have forward movement each week on something at least. And secondly, I think it's important to document things like this, even if you're not the most advanced programmer or making the most cutting edge stuff. I'm sitting here hacking around in BASIC doing simplistic stuff, and every time I post a video, people make comments about like, oh, I wish I was still doing that, or I had one of those computers 40 years ago, it was so much fun, I'd love to get back into that. Well, here's the thing, you absolutely can. You don't have to build the Eiffel Tower every time you build something. You don't have to make the most amazing new version of something every time you make something. It's easy to just jump in and start doing something. It's not going to be the most amazing thing. It may not even be great, but you did it and it's going to make you better. And I can prove that to you. So what you're looking at here is a game called Herding Cats. It's not finished, and it's not very pretty. It was made in 2010 as part of an Atari Age Forums contest I was in. I was pretty new back into retro computing, really just finding my way in basic programming again. And the premise of Herding Cats, which I still think is a pretty good idea, was sort of like the game Lemmings in the 90s, where the lemmings would just keep going and walk off a cliff or do dangerous things to themselves unless you directed certain ones to direct traffic or dig a hole or do other things. With Herding Cats, you couldn't control the cats at all. What you could control was the environment. So you could tip the table or you could put a hole somewhere, and the cats were just going to do whatever they did randomly. Now, this game was slow as molasses. This game was never finished. It had multiple levels and an idea for this level editor and all this stuff that never got done. But here's the thing. The most important thing was you had lots of different key presses. You had lots of different tools at your disposal. And I came up with this sort of scrolly, menu-y thing that didn't look good and wasn't very intuitive, but it got the job done at the time, 15 years ago. But that's where I was right then with trying to figure out how to get all these different commands to work right. Now, contrast that with what I'm working on right now with the game Goats and Golems. With this game, you have 10 options, basically, in 5 in each direction. You can move, you can jump, you can super jump 2 spaces, you can attack 1 space, or super attack 2 spaces. Now, what I'm trying to do with Goats and Golems is to make this game as seamless as possible without a ton of text on the screen. I want everything to be as visual and audio as possible with just more intuitive key presses and stuff. And this is the menu I've come up with so far. This is the bottom of the screen. And the way the key presses are, in theory at least, once you get used to it and start playing the game, the movements and the attacks will be on the various sides, and it'll make sense. And you won't have to have like a weird scrolly menu. You won't have to have a big block of text on the screen. It's going to look so much more elegant, and it's going to look much more professional and clean, and it's going to look nice. It's going to have an actual aesthetic to it and not just be this monochrome blosh of words on the screen. It's going to actually look like a game. And that's the goal I'm going for. And the game's obviously, I'm still in the middle of working on this game, so it's not where I want it to be yet. But I think you can see when you put those two side by side that there is a lot of forward motion just as far as my understanding of how the screen should look and how to get information to the user. Like the health bars, there's little health bars over the goats' heads that I'm going to show you here that are the status bars for each one. So you're not looking at a number. It's not coming up with like a scrolly thing of like goat number 6 is at 42%. No, there's a little red, yellow, or green bar over their head, and it tells you right away. Just very like little things like that I've just picked up from years and years of making game after game of the little things that make the game look nicer and operate more smoothly. And hopefully, if you're playing the game, you don't even really notice it. It just makes for a more seamless experience. And that's, to me, where the personal growth is. And that's what comes from making a game, knowing it's going to kind of suck, and then making another one, and then making another one. And I'm really bad at this. I'm not even making that much progress because there are year-long gaps between some of these things. But that's the ultimate goal of the Devblog and of what I'm doing as far as a coder, is to get this stuff out there and to show that forward progress is possible, and that the more you do, the more you will do. There's momentum to this. When I look at my code every day, it doesn't take me an hour to figure out what I was doing. You know, I have code from 2011, 2012 that I don't even know what the hell it means, and I'm going to have to probably scrap it and start over, or just start line by line rewriting it. It's disorganized. There's go-tos and go-subs all over the place. Variables don't make sense with what I named them. And these are things that I learned how to do better. But also, if I'm working on something every day and there is a quirky part in it that isn't going to make sense to me later, if I just looked at it yesterday, it still makes sense. So a little bit of progress every day is way, way better than putting everything away for a year and a half, coming back to it and looking at it like you have no idea what any of this stuff is. So that's my ultimate goal here, is not only to show off what I'm working on, but to keep myself in check and to show you that if there's something, whether it's retro computing or anything else, if there's something that you want to be doing and think you'd be having fun doing that you would find fulfilling, that incremental progress is the key. Just that little bit of time every day that will make so much difference in what you're doing. I was going to show off more of the game features and stuff, but I'm out of time. So we'll see you next week on the Devblog.